There are wounds that bleed invisibly, wounds that were never caused by harsh words or obvious betrayal, but by whispers in the dark, by hands that moved in secrecy, by rituals and manipulations carried out behind closed doors. They didn't just hurt you with lies or deceit. They went further. They stepped into the shadows. They used witchcraft, invoking forces not of light but of darkness, just to bring confusion, misfortune, and destruction into your life. They thought you wouldn't notice. They believed you'd never figure it out. And even when the chaos began to unfold, your peace slipping away, relationships breaking down, your health deteriorating, and your success stalling, they still stood there, wearing masks of innocence, while their spirits rejoiced in your pain. There was no remorse, no second thought. They never lost sleep over the evil they summoned toward you. In fact, the more you cried, the more they celebrated. The more you stumbled, the more empowered they felt. They used ancient schemes, hidden knowledge, dark prayers, thinking they could puppeteer your destiny while pretending to be your friend, your relative, your companion. But here is the truth they forgot. There is a divine law woven into the very fabric of this universe. It is silent, it is patient, but it is never asleep. What you sow, you will reap. What you send out will return, and when you use evil to destroy someone God protects, it does not vanish. It circles back with precision and wrath. Those who used witchcraft against you were not just attacking your name, your health, or your success. They were attacking your light. They were trying to cover your purpose, intercept your anointing, derail your divine timeline. But what they underestimate is this: when God marks someone, no amount of darkness can cancel that assignment. When God chooses to elevate, no incantation can stop the rise. You may feel weak now. You may feel like the darkness is still hovering. You may wonder if justice will ever be served. But the heavens have recorded every wicked act. The same energy they used to curse you is now working against them. And the karma they never believed in is now real and roaring toward their lives like a storm they cannot escape. So stay silent. Keep your hands clean. You don't have to retaliate. You don't have to speak their names or reveal their deeds. God saw it all, and the judge of heaven and earth is not mocked. Their time of exposure is coming. The same evil they sent will return tenfold, not as a whisper, but as a roar that shakes everything they tried to build. You didn't deserve what was done to you. You didn't invite that darkness, but your response has been your greatest weapon. You remained pure, and that purity has summoned divine justice. You are about to witness what it looks like when God shows someone what karma truly feels like, not through your anger, but through His authority. Let us now walk through 7 truths that will reveal how this divine justice unfolds, not just to comfort your soul, but to remind you that no evil goes unseen and no pain goes unanswered in the courts of heaven. They used hidden darkness while you walked in light, but light will always expose what darkness tries to conceal. They did everything in silence, in secrecy, behind the veil of false smiles and deceitful concern. They watched your life with envy and plotted not with weapons, but with whispers and incantations. While you prayed for peace, they chanted for destruction. While you laid your head in innocent sleep, they stood before altars of darkness, speaking curses into your tomorrow. And yet, through all of this, you walked in light. You lived with pure intentions, extending grace, giving love, and wishing well, even to those whose hearts were blackened by jealousy. You were never trying to become better than anyone. You were simply becoming who God made you to be. But even your quiet glow was too loud for those who lived in shadow. They couldn't handle your peace. They couldn't bear your rising. So they reached for ancient darkness, for twisted spells and hidden forces, hoping they could silence your purpose without lifting a finger. But here is the divine truth. They cannot cover what heaven has already anointed. Light doesn't beg for space, it dominates it. It doesn't argue with darkness, it exposes it. And though for a season it may seem like the shadows are winning, there always comes a moment when God tears the veil. What they did in secret will not remain hidden. The rituals, the curses, the energy sent to destroy you, all of it is returning to them now, exposed and multiplied, because when you hurt a child of light, you are not just defying a person, you are warring against the one who called them, who walks with them, and who protects them. So as their shadows deepen, your light intensifies. The very darkness they used to trap you has become the stage where God reveals your purity. Their curses are turning into confirmation that your spirit was always chosen, and every attempt to bury you has become a crack in the ground through which divine truth now shines. There is no hiding from that kind of light. It doesn't just reveal what was done, it judges it, not with your hands, but with consequences they can neither escape nor explain. The light you carry is not just seen, it is known. And it is that knowing that now haunts them, because no matter how far they ran or how deep they sank into the occult, they cannot escape what has been revealed by the hand of God. The hidden darkness is no longer hidden. And while they once smiled confidently, they now glance nervously at the consequences unfolding, because the light you carried wasn't just your own. It was sent to uncover what they tried to destroy you with. They tried to manipulate your path spiritually, but God has rewritten your destiny beyond their reach. They thought if they could distort your path in the spiritual realm, they could delay or destroy your blessings in the physical world. They tried to bend the direction of your life, not by touching your hands, but by touching your energy. They sent confusion into your thoughts, fatigue into your spirit, and fear into your sleep. They aimed to blur your vision so you would doubt your purpose. They wanted your path to look so foggy, you'd give up before reaching what was promised. But what they didn't realize is that the destiny God writes is not penned in human ink. It is etched into eternity. No dark ritual, no cursed oil, no spell recited in the midnight hour has the power to rewrite what God has sealed. They underestimated the author of your life. They thought their low-level manipulation could compete with divine sovereignty. But God saw it all, and instead of reacting in haste, He rewrote your steps beyond their reach. You may have felt like everything was delayed, like something invisible was always standing in your way, but what you didn't know then is that while they were casting spells to twist your path, God was elevating you beyond the dimensions they could even access. They sent sabotage, but He sent strategy. They hoped to trap you in circles, but He shifted you into a realm where their darkness no longer had authority. Now you are walking in unexpected favor. Doors are opening that they tried to close. Connections are forming that no spell could block. The destiny they tried to confuse is now unfolding clearly, because what was once clouded by their evil is now commanded by God's hand. They cannot follow you anymore. They cannot find the frequency you now operate on. You have risen into a place where their attacks cannot register, and they are panicking because they know what they tried to stop. They remember the exact moments they tried to intercept your blessings. They know the rituals they performed, the names they invoked, the intentions they released. And now that everything is rising for you anyway, now that the blessings are finding you in peace, they know something far greater than their darkness is protecting you. They know they've touched something holy and lived to regret it. They tried to write endings, But God handed you a new beginning they will never be able to touch again. They laughed at your pain, but God will let them taste the bitterness they served without mercy. They found humor in your tears. Smirks curled on their lips while your heart cracked open under the weight of invisible battles. They whispered, "Look at them losing everything," not knowing that every tear you shed was a silent prayer being recorded in heaven's courtroom. They didn't just want to see you suffer, they wanted to enjoy your downfall. And they did. For a time, it looked like they had won. Your energy was drained, your plans shattered, and your spirit was quietly begging for relief. But what they forgot was this: God listens when the broken cry. Heaven leans close when injustice echoes in the silence. They assumed that just because your pain wasn't avenged immediately, it wouldn't be avenged at all. But God was watching, not just your pain, but their laughter. He saw the moments they mocked your faith while secretly dabbling in wickedness. He saw how they used your silence as confirmation that you were defeated, never realizing that silence is sometimes the loudest invitation for divine intervention. They laughed without conscience, but now that same laughter will be the echo that haunts them in sleepless nights. The joy they found in your suffering is turning bitter in their own mouths, because when you laugh at someone's pain, you invite that same pain into your life. And when you laugh while using spiritual forces to fuel that suffering, you multiply the weight of the return. It may not have come the next day, it may not have struck when they expected it, but it's arriving, not from your hands, but from God's. There is no filter strong enough to mask the bitterness they now taste. Life is turning on them in strange ways, doors closing, relationships failing, health unraveling, and peace vanishing. They're starting to feel what you once felt. But there's a difference. You cried with purity. They cry now in confusion. You cried out to God. They cry now with no one to hear them. Because what they gave you without mercy is now being served back without warning. And it's not because you cursed them. It's because spiritual law does not miss. It moves in silence. It returns in perfect timing. They laughed when you lost, but now they're losing everything they boasted about. And as they taste this bitterness, they will remember every moment they clapped when you stumbled. God's justice is not always loud, but it is exact. And what was once your season of humiliation is now their season of consequence, not because you asked for it, but because heaven does not allow mockery of the innocent to go unanswered. They thought witchcraft was power, but now they will learn that divine justice is stronger than any spell. They believed they held the upper hand. They had their candles, their circles, their chants and potions, tools of a dark power passed down in secret, used in silence, cloaked in deception. They whispered your name not in prayer, but in malice. They burned symbols and tied knots, believing that by manipulating the unseen, they could control the seen. They didn't need to raise their voice or lift a weapon. They had witchcraft, and that, in their minds, made them invincible. But real power does not dwell in darkness. Real authority does not need secrecy. And though they thought their rituals were mighty, they were merely playing with counterfeit strength. Because what is done without God is always temporary, and what is done against His chosen is always cursed in return. They thought the flicker of a flame in a hidden room could overpower the fire of heaven. They believed a spell could override a calling. They were wrong. God allowed it for a season, not because He was powerless, but because He was patient. He let them believe they had control so that when justice arrived, it would be undeniable. They thought their magic was working because your life went silent. But what they couldn't see is that God was repositioning you. While they celebrated what looked like your decline, Heaven was orchestrating your rebirth. They mistook delay for defeat, never realizing that divine justice doesn't arrive in haste, it arrives in full, and now it's here. They are beginning to understand that all their spells, curses, and manipulations were not strength, they were sin. They weren't rising in power, they were digging a pit, and that pit is now their home. The very forces they summoned are now consuming their own peace. The spirits they thought were working for them are now turning on them. Because when you touch the innocent with wicked hands, you summon justice that no darkness can hide from. God's justice is not decorative, it is destructive to evil. It doesn't negotiate, it doesn't delay forever. It strikes when it's least expected, and it leaves no doubt that the hand of heaven has moved. Their witchcraft has become their weakness, their spells have become their shackles. And now, as they sit in confusion, unable to fix what is unraveling, they are learning the truth. Divine justice is not just stronger than any spell, it is the only power that lasts. They tried to trap you in confusion, but now they will live in the very chaos they send toward you. There was a time when your life felt like a fog you couldn't escape. Thoughts that once flowed with clarity suddenly felt tangled. Simple decisions became exhausting. Your energy, your focus, even your joy, everything felt just a bit out of reach. You were still alive, but not fully awake. Still walking, but not fully present. It was as if your own mind had turned into a battlefield, and you didn't know why. You checked yourself, questioned your prayers, and even wondered if maybe it was just stress or your own weakness. But deep down, something felt off, unnaturally off. What you didn't know then is that someone was deliberately weaving confusion into your atmosphere. Through chants and spells, through objects charged with negative energy, through the silent manipulation of spiritual realms, they tried to fog your path so completely that you would walk away from your calling. They didn't attack you with noise, they attacked with distortion. Confusion was their weapon. They sent spiritual interference like static in a signal, hoping it would drown out your discernment, your confidence, your connection with God. And for a while, it worked. You doubted things you once knew, you forgot who you were, you questioned everything. You moved through days unsure, always second-guessing your next step. But even in that fog, God was present. Even when you couldn't see the road, He was the hand holding you upright. They thought confusion would cripple you, but instead, it pushed you deeper into trust. It taught you to lean not on your own understanding, but on something higher, something unshakable. And now, the fog is lifting, not slowly. Suddenly, clarity is returning. You're remembering who you are. What once felt like chaos now looks like a battlefield God used to train your spiritual eyes. And as your vision clears, something else is happening in the background. The confusion they sent toward you has turned. It's on them now. The same spiritual instability they launched into your life has begun to wrap around their own. Their plans are falling apart. Their relationships are crumbling. They can't make sense of why nothing is working, why they feel tormented by thoughts they once projected onto others. It's because they sent chaos, and now they are inheriting it. They traded peace for manipulation, and now the very forces they thought they could control are controlling them. Every trap they set has become their own cage. Every spell cast is now echoing back into their atmosphere, unraveling their own peace, turning their own minds into battlegrounds. You, on the other hand, are walking out clean, not confused but wiser, not broken but unshakable. The confusion they sent was meant to destroy you, but it only refined you, and now the chaos is theirs to carry. not because you wished it on them, but because spiritual law returns what was released. The confusion they once weaponized is now the storm they must survive. They believed no one would find out, but God has a way of publicly exposing what was done in secret. They covered their tracks well. To the world they looked like saints, polished, helpful, smiling in every photo, quoting scriptures, talking about kindness. Their hands looked clean, their words sounded soft, and their presence felt harmless. No one would have guessed that behind those charming eyes were intentions soaked in darkness. They didn't just hurt you, they worked hard to make sure no one believed they did. They built a mask so believable that even you doubted your instincts. They wore that mask like armor, while they hid behind shadows, pulling strings to harm you through spiritual manipulation. They were careful, precise, every curse spoken, every object placed, every ritual performed. They thought no one would ever trace it back to them. And in the silence of your suffering they grew bold, because when people do evil and face no consequence, they start to believe they are untouchable. They mocked the idea of exposure. They scoffed at the idea that God was watching. In their arrogance, they believed their darkness could be hidden under the veil of religion, culture, or family ties. But what is done in secret does not remain in secret forever, especially when it is done to someone covered by God. The one who sees in the hidden places does not turn a blind eye to injustice. He waits, he watches, he lets the deception build until it becomes undeniable, and then he exposes. Not through rumor, but through revelation, not through revenge, but through undeniable truth. The cracks are already showing. People around them are beginning to see inconsistencies. Their stories don't add up. Their mask is slipping in quiet ways, slight outbursts, irrational fear, unexplained misfortunes. And those who once praised them are starting to sense something is off. This is no accident. This is exposure, divine exposure, not orchestrated by you, but by heaven itself. What they did in silence is now echoing in ways they cannot control. The very secrets they thought were buried are being whispered in places they never expected, not to humiliate you, but to vindicate you. God is revealing what they did, not to shame them, but to bring justice to you. Their image is fading, their charm is crumbling, and they are terrified, not because of what people think, but because they finally realized they were never hidden from the eyes of the one who mattered. And you? You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to tell your side, force confessions, or seek revenge. All you have to do is stand still, because the same God who saw your pain in secret is now showing the truth in public, not with anger, but with righteousness, not with noise, but with perfect precision. What they thought would remain in the dark is being brought into the light, and there's nothing they can do to stop it now. They hurt you without regret, but now they will feel the regret that comes only when God turns the tables. They watched you suffer and did not flinch. They saw the toll it took on your body, your heart, your finances, your sleep, yet they walked away without remorse. They hurt you and then acted as if they hadn't. They wounded your soul and carried on as if they were the victim. Their words were sharp, their intentions darker than you ever imagined. But what made it all worse was their complete lack of remorse, not a trace of guilt, not an ounce of sorrow. They slept peacefully, while your nights were filled with spiritual storms they helped unleash. They justified their behavior, told themselves you deserved it, told others it wasn't that deep, made excuses, blamed your energy, or said it was your karma, when in truth it was their witchcraft, their malice, their envy, their deliberate attempt to poison your path. They masked their evil with arrogance, believing that their actions would never return, that their spiritual manipulations would never be traced back to them, that no divine force would intervene on your behalf. But that is the most dangerous lie anyone can believe, that hurting someone pure will go unnoticed, that damaging a soul God loves will be without consequence. The silence of heaven was never absence, it was strategy. The delay in justice was not forgetfulness, it was orchestration, and now the tables are turning, not by your hand, not by your rage, but by the hand of a holy judge, who cannot be bribed, silenced, or fooled by appearances. And the turning of the tables does not always begin with thunder or lightning. Sometimes it starts with emptiness, that unexplainable void, that sudden loss of peace, that moment when everything they once used to control begins to spin beyond their grasp. What once worked for them now turns on them. The same witchcraft they once used to tamper with your blessings now begins to erode their own. Slowly, surely, with precision only divine justice can deliver. They wake up anxious for no reason. Their relationships begin to feel strained. The money they once bragged about now flows through their hands like water they can't hold. Opportunities vanish. Rejections multiply. Trust erodes. And they begin to ask, why is everything going wrong? But deep in their soul, a truth whispers back, the truth they've tried to bury, that what they did in pride is now returning in sorrow, that what they sent out in mockery is coming back in waves of regret. This is not karma as the world explains it. This is spiritual balance, God's justice in motion, and it's heavier than they imagined. Because regret is a powerful punishment when there's nothing left to undo what's been done. When the person they broke is no longer reachable. When the peace they disrupted now lives within someone they can no longer touch. When the blessings they tried to curse have multiplied in your life and their own blessings have vanished into the wind. They will think of you often, not because they miss you, but because their conscience won't let them rest. Faces fade, seasons pass, but the face of the one they hurt without reason, yours, will visit their thoughts when they least expect it, in the quiet moments, in the stillness of early morning, in the chaos of unexpected setbacks. You will be there, not in presence, but in memory, as the living reminder of what they did wrong when they thought they were right. And regret will torment them more than guilt ever could, because guilt can be hidden, suppressed, or denied, but regret is loud. It screams in the silence. It repeats what can't be undone. It replays scenes and choices and moments that can't be changed. And they will feel it, not because you curse them, but because they curse themselves, the moment they chose to hurt someone who was sent to bless them. Their ego told them they would never fall. Their pride told them your silence was weakness. But now life is showing them the cost of their cruelty. The mirror doesn't lie anymore. Their reflection carries shame. Their actions carry weight, and the things they once laughed at now bring tears they cannot explain. That is what divine tables look like when they turn. Not just external losses, but internal earthquakes. And while they carry that regret, you are rising, not bitter, but wiser, not broken, but refined. And in that contrast, they will see the greatest judgment of all, not your destruction, but your deliverance. Because nothing reveals the true nature of someone's actions like the fruit they're left holding, and they are now holding the fruit of pain they planted with such arrogance, realizing far too late that what they gave without regret has returned to them as sorrow too deep to escape.